I'd like to thank you all for being here. I'm Dr. Safia Omari, the Chief of Staff for Mayor Lumumba. And we're here this afternoon to discuss the recent announcement by the zoo that they would like to move to LaFleur's Bluff. So without any further introduction, I would like to bring forth our illustrious mayor, the Honorable Chokwe Antar Lumumba.
Thank you. I hired Dr. Omari, so she's required to say that. All right. I just would like to begin by thanking you all for being here this afternoon. I'd like to thank Working Together Jackson and all of the organizations which are enumerated under that umbrella as we make the position clear. It was my understanding that I had made this clear previously, but for anyone who's under any misconception, it is the position of myself and my administration that we do not support the move of the zoo from West Jackson. All right? We understand the unique challenges that the zoo is facing. In fact, we understand the challenges that zoos across the nation are facing. And we believe that if there is a significant investment in the Jackson Zoo, it should be made right where it is today. All right? To discuss a $50 million plus investment in a zoo in a new location is disrespectful to the history of the zoo. It is disrespectful to the community in which the zoo currently resides. And as we look at developing our city, our proposition is that we are not for moving towards the old models of developing a city. Models which look at how you build great edifices and move people from one state of misery to the next. And so we will not support losing another resource out of West Jackson. We will not support the idea that a zoo is better positioned just because we see it as being easy to move it to an area of town which has all of the resources already. I stand there because I stand on this on principle. I stand on this on the basic belief that we have to build Jackson for everyone. I stand there as a North Jackson resident myself. I understand that we have to support all areas of Jackson. When we create voids in West Jackson, it impacts all of Jackson. When we create voids in West Jackson, then the people in North Jackson, the people in South Jackson have to take up the tax burden. When people leave, when conditions are worsened, when crime rises because less opportunity and less resources are in communities, it does not maintain just in the sector in which you decided to remove the resource. Crime is not in a bubble. It will affect everyone across the city. And so we stand with Working Together Jackson. We stand with the West Jackson community in the proposition that the zoo should not be removed, and we will use all tools in our toolbox in order to ensure that that does not happen. As we look at the words of Jack Hanna, who recently visited Jackson, Mississippi, and what Jack, who is a world-renowned expert on wildlife, when he came to visit the Jackson Zoo, he talked about the treasure it was. And he talked about how it was rare that we still had a zoo that had the environment that our current zoo has. And he said that he thinks under no circumstances should the Jackson Zoo be removed. And we stand with Jack in that notion. At this time, I would invite representatives from Working Together Jackson. Well, I would first invite City Council President Charles Tillman, who has a significant amount to say about this issue as it impacts his ward. Mr. Tillman, if you would please join us at the podium.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am highly upset. We worked hard over the years to make sure that the zoo maintain its accreditation. We sent people to Memphis to meet with the accreditation committee. We put people on the zoo board that we thought had like minds as the city council, the administration, and especially the citizens of West Jackson. And to be here today, to fight, to try to keep the zoo in West Jackson, it's a sad day. Like the mayor said, Jackson is Jackson. All resources shouldn't be in one part of the city. It needs to be spread around so citizens can move around the city of Jackson. Resources can move around the city of Jackson. But when you take everything out, one section of Jackson, what's left? What's left? I asked the zoo board, those who voted, to meet and rescind their vote and work with the administration, all the other citizens, organizations, working together Jackson, and let's move forward and making the zoo an ideal place for all to love, cherish, and go for entertainment. Thank you.
Thank you, President Tillman. At this time, I would invite representatives from Working Together Jackson to provide their statement this afternoon.
Hi, my name is Heather Ivory, and this is Ricky Jones. Thank you. We represent Working Together Jackson, which is an organization collective of over 35 organizations in our city. We're committed to rebuilding our city, and we also represent Zero Area Progressive Partnership, which is a member of Working Together Jackson. Additionally, I'm a long-time resident of West Jackson for the last 20 years and an avid supporter of the Jackson Zoo. Today, Working Together Jackson and ZAP leaders stand behind me with the mayor in objecting to the relocation of the Jackson Zoo. The zoo's recent announcement of its intent to leave West Jackson was disheartening, to say the least. Not only because of the possibility of losing a historic 100-year-old ecosystem, and not only because of the lack of transparency and involvement of the community in the decision-making process, but also, and very importantly, because of what relocation of the zoo would mean for the redevelopment of West Jackson. We realize that it is possible to develop a new zoo simply as an entertainment attraction at some other part of the city. And while it's true that the zoo is a great venue for entertainment and education for students and researchers, it could also be one that becomes even better with proper investment. We understand that the zoo is much more than just entertainment. Indeed, the Jackson Zoo is important to the redevelopment of West Jackson and into the entire city. For the past few years, we have heard excuses about why the zoo can't stay in West Jackson. Mostly, it's related to the supposed undesirability of the area around the zoo. We acknowledge that the zoo and the neighborhoods around it are in need of support. We're in need of a lot of support. But West Jackson and its residents will not shoulder the blame or the burden for the Jackson Zoo's inability to survive. There are many factors that have contributed to its steep decline in attendance over the last 10 years, many of which are the results of years of neglect and disinvestment. We know that this doesn't have to be the end of the story. And at one point, the zoo acknowledged this too. Just a couple of years ago, the Jackson Zoological Society enacted a strategic planning process that produced an excellent plan for the redevelopment of the zoo right where it is now. The unveiling of the plan led to an article in the Clarion Ledger about how it was a new day for the zoo and it was a new day for Jackson. However, only a year later, a report by Schultz and Williams concluded that people will not invest in the zoo at its current location. We've heard presentations by zoo management stating that some donors may be willing to give millions of dollars if the zoo moves, but they're not willing to give any if it stays where it is. To that, we humbly suggest that they are asking the wrong people. In a year's time, there's no way that we could have possibly exhausted all options for zoo funding.
Thank you. Many of the leaders here have tried to work with the zoo board to offer ideas and for resources and help figuring out creative solutions to the problems. But we are largely left out of the process and ignored. So for years, mostly on our own, we have worked with the zoo to support the area around by hosting neighborhood walks, cleanups, and promoting zoo membership and events. Now we arrive at this moment where the zoo board has essentially thrown up its hands and decided to move elsewhere. The residents of West Jackson feel the opportunity for developing being shifted to areas of the community that is perceived as being more deserving. Working Together Jackson, however, has not given up on the zoo or West Jackson. We submit that our families, institutions, they are more than deserving of these opportunities, so we are working to create them ourselves. Working Together Jackson has prioritized the revitalization of West Jackson, and our institutions are investing in our money, our human resource into redeveloping West Jackson. We have set into motion organizing strategies that include organizing in public schools in West Jackson, eradicating blight, and we have mapping our plans developing 500 affordable homes that will be owned by low to moderate income families. We are working with Mayor Lumumba and his administration and other community organizations on these efforts. We are not just giving lip service to these priorities. So Working Together Jackson joins the mayor, other officials in calling for a strategy for West Jackson that include home ownership opportunities and redeveloping of the zoo as a part of the broad redevelopment strategy. Instead of moving resources out of West Jackson, we urge those who want to invest in the zoo to join us in making those investments into West Jackson as a whole. The entire city has an interest in ensuring that West Jackson thrives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the support. I stand with you, Working Together Jackson. Thank you, Councilman Tillman, and thank you for all of those allies in the fight to maintain the zoo where it presently resides. I will conclude my statements and then I'll give an opportunity for any questions that you may have. I will conclude my statements by this action is an effort essentially to block out a portion of our city, to remove people from the future plans of our city. It creates a wall, and I will steal a line from a recent movie that many of us had an opportunity to see in Black Panther, where they said, foolish men build walls, wise men build bridges. This is an opportunity to build a bridge with West Jackson. It's an opportunity to build bridges where we all connect across the city, and we stand with supporting the entire city. We represent all of Jackson, and we want to see all of Jackson rise. And so we're going to do everything that we can to push that concept and bring that idea into fruition. At this time, we will take a few questions.
Mr. Mayor, who owns the zoo?
The city, well, I was thinking the questions were going to come from here. Yeah.
But that is a great question.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
My question is,
We'll demonstrate that we own the zoo. All right?
what recourse do you have to try to stop the zoo managers from leaving West Jackson? Are you talking about legal action, or are you talking about throwing a lot of money at the zoo to try to keep them from relocating?
I'm talking about a number of decisions that we can make. In terms of investment, we have been clear that our intent is to invest heavily in blight elimination in West Capitol, on Capitol Street. We have made it clear that our intent is to create more of an atmosphere leading up into the zoo, that the experience starts from 220 into the zoo, so that that happens. And we will look at all options, right? Whether it's a management question or not, we will look at all options. We are not removing any alternatives from the table. When we talk about investing $50 million, we talk about going to the state legislature for funding. If we see that as a source to fund a new zoo, then why don't we see the state legislature as a source for funding the current zoo? If they're willing to pay $50 million, right, to move it to Northeast Jackson, then what would our state legislature be indicating to how they feel about the people of West Jackson? What are they saying? That they are unworthy? Are they saying that they are not worth the investment? And so most people don't believe in what you're investing in until you invest in it in yourself. And so we're going to make an investment from the city side, and we're going to promote that the proper investment take place where the zoo presently resides. And so we will not be removing any tool from our shed, anything that we need to use in order to demonstrate where we stand and how firm we stand on this issue, we will. Next question.
Mayor, speaking of investing in yourself, there's been a lot of talk over the years about redevelopment in West Jackson and really working. Lots of talk and no action. What's different about your administration in this?
Well, I think what's different is, well, I won't speak to past administrations and their sincerity and the effort. I understand that things take time. But there are a number of things that we have on the ground right now that can achieve that. When I'm talking about a blight elimination program, I'm talking about a program that we've already been accepted to, right? I'm talking about a program where we've already spoken to those individuals who've owned many of those houses and how we start working that plan. And so we're not talking about something in a distant future of an idea that we haven't yet obtained the resources to achieve. We're talking about something that is moving right now, right? Something that is going to take place right now. The individuals that are standing with me, we've had many conversations before I took office. We've gone across the country. We've gone to places in the country to see examples of things that are taking place and take from those examples of what we can utilize now. So we're very serious about this. We believe that our defense will be our work, and so we're working our plan. Next question.
How much money does the city provide the zoo annually, and will it continue if they move?
Well, I can't speak about what's going to happen if they move. First and foremost, let me speak to that issue, because it's about a consistent plan, and I think people need to really understand the entire narrative. Not only is there a discussion about moving the zoo, there's a discussion about renaming the zoo, right? That it becomes Mississippi Zoo, right? Just as we've seen discussions over history where a reservoir that we invested in no longer belongs to the city of Jackson. Where we see a present discussion right now about an airport where we invested, where we made a strategic decision to place an airport where it resides, and it gave, let's be clear, don't talk about Rankin County being under the pressure of Jackson because of what is taking place or not taking place with the airport. Rankin County didn't exist in the way we know it now until Jackson invested in the airport where it is. And so as we talk about this decision to take away Jackson's investment, to profit now on the things that Jackson had the foresight when Jackson took the risk of investing on, we won't stand for that, right? Jackson is going to support its own institutions, and we want the state who Jackson provides significant support to each and every day. We're talking about a city where over half of the buildings downtown are state-owned facilities, right? And those state-owned facilities, Jackson provides water to. Jackson provides police and fire coverage to. And we don't receive commensurate compensation for that. And so we are not supporting this notion that talks about removing our zoo at this time, which is a part of a long line of decisions at this point. I'm going to go to the next question.
How much money does the city?
I would have to get back with you on the current. I know that we increased the investment from what was in the prior budget, and it was consistent with where the investment scale was prior. I think it's about $900,000, and so that was an increase. And we will look at how we look at other opportunities to increase an investment going forward.
Has there been any discussion about the lease being up in September 2018 and maybe using that as leverage, or what would happen to it? Since
all I would say at this time is yes, there has been discussion. All right, and that's what I'll say. All right.
Can we ask personal questions too?
Yeah, we will take an opportunity. If there are no further questions for the press conference as it is.
If I can play devil's advocate for a second, if someone were to say this seems like closing the barn door after the horses left, since Beth Poff has talked about already, dreaming about the zoo somewhere else, what's that?
I would say that I don't believe that this is a closed discussion. I believe as we talk about investment, I think that there is something to be said about the conditions of the zoo and how it affects the attendance. But I also would say that when you acknowledge that there has been a significant decrease in the marketing of the zoo, there's no question why the decrease of attendance takes place. When you talk about the animals that you don't offer, when I look at my experience as a child in Jackson Public Schools and going to the zoo. I was excited because I knew I was going to see an elephant, right? I don't see any elephants now. When I was excited because I knew I might hear a lion roar. We don't get to hear lions roar. And that's not to say that efforts have not been sincere over time in order to sustain the zoo. But there are many factors which lead to the decline of attendance. And if you're talking about investment of a significant amount of money into the zoo, I would imagine if they were to move the zoo to North Jackson, they would have a lion there, right? They would have elephant, right? They would have animals that children and people and adults like to see. That has every bit to do with the factors that lead to the decline in attendance. It's what you offer. You can't talk about any business. Once you start offering less to the clientele that you have, then it's going to impact the attendance, it's going to impact the experience that you provide to people. And so to have this very short-sighted analysis of, it being in West Jackson as being the only factor which has led to the decline is disingenuous. And we're seeing a zoo that has survived for more than 100 years, and I believe that we're smart enough to allow it to survive now as it stands. Thank you. You just want me, or we got other people here that I'm sure. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.